Welcome to Buckets. This is Action Network's basketball betting podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm Maria Marino. So happy to be back with Action Network writer Jim Turvey at Turvey Bets on Twitter /X/ the Action app. Jim, good to have you back. I hope you had a nice trip away.
I did. It was great to, kind of semi-remove for a bit, kind of watch games. Like I said, I paid attention. I was watching games kind of more from the fan perspective than the betting perspective. Just get like kind of a reset, kind of zoom out, kind of be able to do that big picture thing that, I think it's really hard to kind of not get lost in the nitty gritty sometimes. So, and plus it's just fun to watch the games without a little bit of action sometimes. So I'm excited to be back though. And we've got some fun series here to attack. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, hopefully that fresh perspective serves us well today. You said it, semifinals are well underway. And, I love betting game twos. I'm not so much into betting game ones. I like to kind of sit back and see what happens in the first game of each series and then, kind of figure out what the narrative might be for game two. I'm big on motivational spots. So let's get right into it. We have the Sun at Liberty, game 2, 8 Eastern on ESPN. You already know by now, if you're listening, the Suns stole game 1, 78-63. This was a season low in points for the Liberty, 63 points. Season low in shooting percentage as well, 33.8%. Sandy Brondello called this their worst game of the season. I would have to agree. I wasn't too shocked, Jim. I'm shocked a little bit that they lost, but I kind of knew this was going to be a dogfight, just because. Look, Connecticut, they're hungry, they're so motivated. They lost to the Liberty 4 times in the regular season, so it's kind of tough to win all 5 in a row. No excuses for the Libs, though. I'm a little hesitant to bet the spread of this game. It was Liberty favored by 8.5. Looks like a little bit of money is coming in on that side, and they are now favored by 9.5. I don't really love that number, even though the Libs, after a loss, are 6-2 ATS. 4 of those 6 wins were double-digit covers. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's like you said, you love diving into these game twos. I'm kind of right there with you. I think there's a lot to be said for, kind of projecting out a game one and kind of being like, oh, I think this player, might match up well, or this player, might not get as many minutes. But then when you get to see the game one, you get to actually see it, and you get to bring in some of those, motivational factors like you were saying. And I think it's interesting that both of these games for tonight opened up with the same spreads and totals that the game ones opened up with. So the books think that, they saw their game ones and they're pretty confident with what the closing line was for those first game ones as we head into game two. As you noted, the Liberty have taken a little bit of money. I think part of that might be this kind of like zigzag playoff theory that, in postseasons we often see a team that's trailing in the series, they do have that extra push. They do have a little bit of that. It's starting to get baked into some of these lines. So I'm kind of with you on not loving anything on the spread here. I lean a little bit towards the Liberty, I think, as you do as well. But I also lean a little bit towards the under, which makes me a little bit scared to lay double-digit points. This first game was really slow. It was played at incredibly slow paced, the slowest pace of any of the games that these two teams met up during the season. I think that does play into the Sun hands. So I'll be curious to see, if the Liberty are able to speed things up. And to me, the biggest factor, and this is groundbreaking news, the biggest factor is Stewie. She really hasn't looked entirely herself the last couple weeks. I think it's a blip on the radar type of thing. If you look at the bigger picture, Stewie is not one who's struggled in the postseason. In fact, she has been incredible in the postseason for large chunks of her career. So what I'm looking at is her point prop. It's in at 22.5, which is right around her season average. But what I'm eyeing here is, so last game she shot just 28% from the field. So in the 8 games in which she shot 30% or worse from the field this season, she followed those up with 45 points, 28 points, 24 points, 25 points, 25 points. Then she did have a 12 and a 10, but then 27. So she usually comes back off of these really strong. And, it's not like she wasn't getting looks in game one. In game one, she got she got
25, I think, was her
Yes,
field
thank you.
goal.
I didn't have the exact number in front of me. So, yeah, she
Yeah.
got a lot of field goal attempts up. She got 8 threes up. It's not as if, I think AT is a great defender, but I don't think her biggest strength actually is kind of chasing around a fellow big on the perimeter. Some of her strengths are kind of, recovery quickness, her strength in the post, her hands, at ball hawking. But none of that makes me think Stewie's going to go 0 for 8 from 3 again. And if you just give her, two of those three, if you give her one of those threes, she's at 22 and she's right
Yeah.
at the number base right there. Another one and she's clearing it. I think they're going to look to establish her a lot more. I think she's going to know this is, you can't go down 0-2 in a 5-game series headed to Connecticut. So I think Stewie's really going to be locked in. And so I like that over 22.5. On the flip side of it, I think AT, Alyssa Thomas, I might be looking at her.
Wait.
Hop in.
Can I respond about Stewie first?
Yes.
Sorry, being traffic controller. No, I obviously really like the Plague because of everything that you said. And I think that it's not just like, the team establishing Stewie. Like, I think she just needs to force the issue a little bit more from the tip. I think she was letting the game come to her a little bit. And that shooting percentage, I think is a little misleading too, only because, it wasn't good, like, regardless, but like, you could tell late in the game, she just started chucking because she was forcing, trying to get something going. But yeah, 0 of 8 from 3 is so uncharacteristic. Although I will note that in the playoffs thus far, like, she didn't shoot particularly well against Washington either.
No.
So I have her at just over 27% from the field so far in 3 games. But that being said, I agree with everything else. It's just really hard to keep her down for long, and she knows the need. She knows the need and the desperation of this. So I'm with you there. I just wanted to chime in really quick, but please
No,
tell me about
absolutely. Well, and I'll follow up to your point really briefly, just in noting that in those, so I referenced 8 games in which Stewie shot under 30% or under from the field. In those bounce back games, they're also 7-1, the Liberty, in those games. So I mean, they're a strong team anyways, but I do think that when she puts her first foot forward and really kind of like is looking to attack early, that only means good things for the Liberty. So I'm not Mr. Same Game Parlay, but if you wanna do a Stewie and Liberty tied together, I think those two are hand in hand for this game. So just to swing back to AT really quick. So this is kind of the flip side, and this is kind of where I'm looking. Sometimes if a game is I'm leaning under, I will kind of try to find a player prop that I like the under on more. And this is one where, so Alyssa Thomas, I've highlighted her points against the Liberty before as a potential under spot. So in her 5 games against the Liberty this season, she scored 5, 11, 22, 8, 8. So she's gotten under this 60.5 like easily for the 5 games. Part of that is the Liberty defense. They have the best field goal percentage defense on 2-point attempts in the league, and Alyssa Thomas isn't taking threes. We saw from in that first game that they do have a little bit of a hard time kind of closing out on those threes. They gave up way too many open looks to Beck Allen and some of those other shooters that the Sun have. But inside the arc, they have some of the best interior defense in the league. Her field goal attempts also go down a little bit against the Liberty, about 1 per game. That also includes an overtime game, so it's even like a little bit more than 1 a game. I think she's pretty content to be in the facilitator role and kind of kick out to those shooters that they have from beyond the arc. So I think this number is high at 16.5. So I'm gonna be looking at the under on her points in this game. Again, unfortunately, I don't think you can. I couldn't find a book where you could weave the under into a same game parlay, but this is the type of game that I do think kind of has a script to it that if Stewie is scoring, that's good for Liberty. If AT is not scoring, that's probably closer to the under. So some of these things that those are going to be tied together at the book. The book understands that, but maybe even more so than their little algorithm will tell them. So
yeah, interesting. And on a side note, I do wonder, Beck Allen, is she going to shoot as well as she did in game 1, or even like Natisha Heidemann? It just seems like, look, DeWanna Bonner, you kind of expect she's really, I think, underrated as a scorer, if that's possible. But one other prop that I was kind of interested in, I haven't fully made up my mind on it yet, but was looking at Jonquel Jones' rebounding total at 9.5. Um, and the reason I thought of it is because look, you need Jonquel Jones to get a double double. That seems to be like part of the Liberty's winning formula. And in fact, last game was the first time this season that JJ got a double double and they did not win the game. So they are 14-1 in those scenarios. They were
Wow.
previously 14-0 when JJ got a double double. So that is something I would just take a look at, and I wonder about. I'm a little tempted about that parlay that you mentioned with maybe Libs winning, maybe Stewie over points. Because we mentioned like game 2 versus game 1, and when the trailing team, do you want to hit them, and especially when that team that's trailing is the favorite and
Yeah.
been the better team throughout the season. We talk about that a lot in NBA postseason. This would typically be what we would call like a hammer spot.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit nervous about just the spread. Maybe that's just my Liberty fandom being paranoid. But
Well, can I tack on that
yes,
really quick? I'll just say that Jonquel has cleared this number easily in all 3 of these playoff games, and I do think that I really like that as a third piece. If you go Stewie points, JJ
okay,
rebounds, Liberty, I'm with you on being nervous about the spread, so maybe like buy a point or two. I don't typically love
yes,
that, but you're already going to have a
yeah,
long number if you have 3 plays all put together. So
exactly.
yeah, I think there's a little something there. I like that a lot.
Okay, cool. All right, we got another game to talk about. Wings at Aces, 10 Eastern on ESPN. Aces favored by 10.5. And, I think they were favored. I think at last check they were favored by 10 going into the last game. They win handily. Now they get 10.5. Aces won the game 97-83. I'm going to just come right out and say I'm leaning Wings plus the points here. I haven't. I'm hoping I'm going to pull the trigger here after this pod, but I just think that the Wings they just played a really bad game. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
really off night for Enrique. I think she had 12 points. They let the Aces get 21 points off of just 12 turnovers, which is pretty wild. I think Kelsey Plum can be a little streaky. She had a really good game 1. Like I could see her maybe regressing a bit. And then Asia's been Asia. I mean, she's been amazing. I think she scored, what was it, 34, 30 plus she scored. But I just don't like I'm waiting to see the Aces face like a little bit of adversity or a little bit of something not going their way. I still think they're going to win the game, but if there's going to be a time in this series where they hit a little bit of that, where they have to battle through and everything's not just going their way, I think it's going to be tonight.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I am not exactly on the wing spread, but I'm kind of the bet that I have is kind of a similar one. So I'm going with the Aces team total under 93.5. So it's always a little sus to be betting against this team and this offense in particular, but there's just a couple signs that make me think that this point total might drop a little bit from game 1 to game 2. So in game 1, you mentioned they scored 97 points, so they did clear it, but the actual pace of the game was slower than some of their previous matchups this season. As well as both teams' actual just pace for the season, which is interesting because they are usually 2 pretty fast-paced teams. But that's typical of the postseason. In the postseason, things typically do slow down a little bit. We see pace go down and field goal percentage go down a little bit. And it's that field goal percentage part that interestingly went way up last game, especially for the Aces. So they shot 7% better from 3 than they did in the regular season. And, Asia went 15 of 21 from inside the arc. So, either of those factors come back to what we're expecting, and now we're right around that 93 point, right below, right under. You also mentioned the points off turnovers. That's about 4 points higher than their season average, which again, shave 4 points off. We're now hitting that under. They made all 13 of their free throws. They got 10 offensive rebounds against a Wings team that's actually one of the better rebounding teams in the league. That's about 2 rebounds higher per game. Again, that's like maybe 4 points. There's a lot of different ways that this can, we shave off a point or 2 here or there. There's also the potential for a blowout. This game stayed close the entire time through. So the Aces played their starters the entire time. And so they did, that number crept over right at the very end. But I think you and I see this as a closer game. But there's many ways to win bets, and you want to have as many different outs as possible. That's another possible game script. The aces just jump all over them. This is over in the first half, and they're sitting people in the fourth. So the only thing I'll add to that is I might even look to live bet this, because the Aces have been a team that really puts up impressive totals in the first half. So if you're watching this and they're making a lot of threes again, you mentioned Kelsey being streaky from three. Jackie Young was also 5 of 6 from three last game. So if they're once again kind of hitting a lot of threes, but maybe the pace is slow, and it's like they're once again due for regression. I know it's kind of scary if you just keep seeing these threes go in to bet on them eventually not going in. But I might do a little bit at the start of the game, and then also be looking to tack on around half, because I see this being more like 90, 85 kind of range for a game, closer, a little bit lower scoring for the Aces. But I'm pretty much in lockstep with you on this being, well, I think should be a really fun game too, and pretty closely contested.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's time, and I think the Dallas Wings, they're definitely a better team than they showed in game one. We want to see a closer game, and like I just need it. Like I need a little bit. Like I need the Aces to look beatable. They absolutely crushed the Chicago Sky in round one. They had an entire week of rest, which they obviously don't this time around. I do think the Wings are, we've talked about it all season. They're dangerous. They can get hot. They've been pretty well coached. So, I'm counting on them to bring it here in game two. Whether that's a win, I'm not super confident, but I think they can definitely put up a fight.
Well, I kind of want to see what Satu Sabali can show us in game two. She is the winner of the most improved player of the year, very deserved, incredible player. I think one of those things where we haven't caught up to how good she really actually is. And she didn't really show it in game one. She had kind of a mediocre game one, especially in a game where it seemed like the Aces kind of wanted to have her be the one to beat them. They threw some smaller matchups at her. I'd love to see her kind of take advantage of that and really kind of show off the player that she has become. And I think she will. I think she's one of the best players in the league now. And I think I'd really be looking at her as a player to maybe stand out here in game two. Arike is the big name, and she's going to have her moments for sure. But I think Satu is the one who maybe is going to drive a Wings closer game. If she's really locked in on both ends, that's going to be a big factor for them sticking around.
Look, it's the playoffs. You can't expect every game for the better team to coast. It's got to get a little gritty. That's what I'm hoping for tonight.
Absolutely.
I want to remind everyone that Buckets is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 paid back in bonus bets if your first bet loses. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Thank you so much for listening to Buckets. And Jim Turvey, thank you for joining us. We missed you. Good to have you back. Make sure you follow Jim at Turvey Bets on our award-winning Action app. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast. You could win Action swag or a free subscription to Action Pro. Jim, thanks again.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be back. Hopefully we started up with a winning day here.
Let's get buckets.